What time is it? I think maybe to start. Namo Vishnu Banaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Nanda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So yesterday we talked about the Shraddha and then Bhajana Kriya, which was anishtata. So we have to go from unsteady bhakti to steady bhakti, or the stage of nishta. So that interim period is called anartha nivritti, or destruction of impurities. So Vishnu Chakravarti analyzes anartha, or these impurities, into 4 types. Things arising from previous sinful activity. So in previous lifetimes we've done sin, and consequently in this lifetime we have different limitations and different circumstances of suffering. So that can be one anartha. Plus we can get the desires that arise from that as well. Anarthas arising from previous pious activity. So due to pious activities we may get wealth or position in this lifetime without striving for it. That can be an anartha also, because we become attached to it. Anartha arising from offenses. So we do offenses, and this causes problems for us. It could be previous lifetime or this lifetime. And obstacles arising from the performance of bhakti. So these are the 4 types, and then he'll explain each one. So, I explained the other day that the kleshagni meant destruction of suffering, and then suffering was divided into 5 types, starting with ignorance and ending up abhinivesha. So, we get various types of suffering as a result of our sinful acts. We get karmas, ultimately, through the various things like raga, attachment, or dvesha, hatred. So these are activities can lead to suffering. So ultimately we get, for instance, the root cause was ignorance. And ignorance causes all the other 4 kleshas to arise. And then due to that, then we do activities. The activities may be sinful, and then the sinful acts give suffering in some lifetime. And this can act as an obstacle for us. But also the very kleshas themselves, the sources of suffering, can also cause problems for us in terms of anartha. So we have ignorance, that's the root cause of everything. So this is, of course, is a big anartha, because it causes everything else. It causes our existence in the material world. So we have ahankara, false pride, etc. So this itself continues life after life, and produces all sorts of activities we do. Sinful activities, violent activities, etc., which can be a problem for us. We have attachment, and we have repulsion, and we have fear of death. So those were the 5 kleshas. And in various ways, they themselves can cause problem, or instigating us to act. Those actions can cause a problem by producing suffering. So we have previous pious activities. Due to pious activities, we get a higher life, we get sattvic life, we may even go to other planets, higher planets. Some people may consider that good, but this can lead to attachment to sattva gun, attachment to those particular types of enjoyment. So therefore, pious activities are also, the result is ultimately some obstacle for us. And then we have Anarthas arising from aparadha. Primarily, this refers to the nam-aparadhas. They're the most serious. We have seva-aparadhas, that is deity aparadhas, like walking in the temple with your shoes on or arguing in front of the deity, etc. So those are not considered so serious. The nam-aparadhas are more serious. So, aparadhas are like sinful activities, but they're directly related to the Supreme Lord and the devotees. So therefore, they are more serious in terms of the effect on bhakti. Sinful activities produce suffering of our body, but aparadhas will reduce our bhakti or destroy our bhakti. So that's the difference. So, unconscious aparadhas are not so serious, but they weaken the bhakti to some degree. And we can rectify that by constant chanting of the name of the Lord. If the aparadha is conscious, then it becomes more serious, more difficult to remove. It has greater effect on our bhakti. So of all the different aparadhas, the Vaishnava aparadha is considered to be the worst one, like Gaurava or Sadhu Ninda. So they are considered very serious. So, of course, accidentally we may offend the Vaishnavas. That's not so bad. But if we actually hold hatred towards the Vaishnavas and we maybe act or do things or say things against them, then this becomes quite serious, and it can destroy the bhakti even. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita there, it's described that the Vaishnava aparadha is like the mad elephant. So the mad elephant is a wild elephant. They still have these sections of India where they have mad elephants, like in Assam, for instance, or parts of Bengal. They have wild elephants. So sometimes the elephants get real angry and they charge into a village and they'll just wantonly destroy everything on purpose. So they destroy all the crops, destroy the houses. It's like that. So, in other words, they don't leave anything standing. So the Vaishnava aparadha can also be like that. It will destroy bhakti. We cultivate the seed of bhakti, it grows, it sprouts, and it's growing up, and then the mad elephant comes along, and the Vaishnava aparadha, and it stamps on it, and it's finished. So it can be quite serious. So therefore we have to be very conscious that we always respect the devotees of the Lord. Of course, Krishna is very dear to the devotees. Therefore, if one offends a devotee, the Lord becomes very disturbed. And, of course, another reason is that it's the devotees who are the cause of spreading mercy and bhakti in this material world. So if we offend the devotees, we are destroying the cause of our advancement. So, therefore, this conscious aparadha is quite serious. So, what do we do if we've done that? So, the main remedy, of course, is we have to regret and have repentance for that particular act. And then Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains that not only regret, then one has to personally apologize to the particular devotee one has offended and give him proper respect. One may give the argument, well, the Vaishnava is very, very peaceful and, he's not disturbed by my offense because he's exalted. But that's not an excuse. Still one has to go and offer apologies to the person. If one avoids that, then the offense becomes worse. It doesn't rectify. So one has to make that attempt to apologize. Okay. So there may be cases where the Vaishnava is not satisfied with the apology. So what does one do? One's made the attempt. So one can only continue to chant the name of the Lord. So if one says, well, I'll just chant the name and I won't apologize, then that's going to make a further offense. So Or we say, oh, the Vaishnava has faults, therefore not bad if we criticize him. Then it's a further offense. So in Harinam Chintamani, also Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that unless the devotee is in prema, then we can always point out some fault. Even a devotee in bhava has fault. So we have Bharat. So we can criticize him for falling. Why he neglected worship of Vishnu and instead got attracted to a deer. So we can criticize him for that. So what to speak of those who are Madhyama devotees on a lower level? People doing sadhana bhakti. Definitely. They can have all sorts of faults. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that these faults may be previous faults. And we will criticize him. Well, previously he was doing this, this, and this before he became a devotee. So that is not considered proper. Now, when we become devotees, we are aiming for, proper conduct, no sinful activities, etc. Nevertheless, because we still have anarthas, we may commit a mistake, we may commit a sinful activity, etc. Still, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that such a devotee is still my devotee. Sadhu eva samantavya. He should be respected as long as he continues the process of bhakti sincerely. So, if we criticize that person also, that's considered offense. So, we have to be very careful then in the criticizing the Vaishnava. So, yeah, he may have faults. Nevertheless, we refrain from that criticism. Okay, so among the aparadhas, the first was, of course, the Vaishnava criticizing the Vaishnava. The second one is like misunderstanding the position of Vishnu and considering that the names of demigods and others are equal to the name of Vishnu. So we put Vishnu down on the level of devatas, or we bring everybody up to the level of Vishnu, which is not proper. So we do have to have a proper understanding of the scriptures and understand that Vishnu is the highest position. Of course, Vishnu, Krishna, Narasimha, they're all one. So Bhagavan's in the highest position, devatas are second. Shiva is also a form of Vishnu, but he manifests significantly less qualities. He may be covered by the gunas if a jiva takes up that role. Sometimes a jiva becomes Shiva, so therefore he's covered by the gunas, just as Brahma is a guna avatar, generally a jiva, but he can have faults also in some cases. In other cases, of course, the role of Brahma is taken by the Supreme Lord, in which case he wouldn't have faults. Nevertheless, they are definitely on a lower level. Brahma, because generally he's a jiva. Shiva, because even if he is a form of the Supreme Lord, he manifests a limited amount of qualities, lower than those of Vishnu. So we cannot equate them and say they're all the same. So when we take the position of Vishnu, he is independent. And of course we have different forms. We have Krishna, who has 64 qualities manifest. We have Vishnu with 60 qualities, etc. Then we have Shiva, 55 qualities, significantly less qualities than the Vishnu forms. So Shiva himself regards himself as the servant of Vishnu. His particular service is to be in charge of tamagun and destroy the material world. He's in charge of things which are tamasic, like ahankara. He is the deity in charge of ahankara. He's in charge of, he has these 11 Rudra expansions in the material world, in charge of anger, etc. He's in charge of tamagun and all things related to that. He's in charge of the people who are in tamagun, like ghosts and hobgoblins and things like that. And of course, one aspect of tamas is destruction. Rajagun is creative, tamagun is destructive. So when things get destroyed, that's the influence of tamagun. So Shiva's in charge of that. Then we have the big destruction, whole destruction of the material universe. So Shiva's also involved in that. Another aparadha is Shruti Shastra Ninda, criticizing the Shrutis. So, of course, we can take that as a general term for criticizing the scriptures. But here, Vishnu Chakravarti takes it as Shruti, as the Vedas. And particularly because a large part of the Vedas are karma-kanda oriented, which generally the Vaishnavas condemn as being inferior. However, we should not unnecessarily criticize that, because we see that Krishna himself praises karma yoga in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It says worship devatas, etc. So these processes of mentioned in karma kanda, to do sacrifices to elevate yourself to Svargaloka, they have a place. They have a place because some people will never take to the worship of Vishnu with bhakti. So they have to do something else. They cannot do jnana because they are too attached. So they are engaged with the process of karma yoga and worship of devatas, etc. So we should not criticize them, because the scripture provides for them this particular process. So the karma kanda section of the Vedas is for people that don't have faith. Let them at least follow rules and regulation, worship devatas, get their material desires fulfilled. Now, the plan, ultimate plan of the Lord, is that through karma yoga they get purified, because they have to follow rules and regulations for even worship of devatas. They have to do austerities. Okay? So through that, gradually, they become purified, and they rise through the gunas. And tamagun to rajagun, eventually sattvagun. When they get to sattvagun manifests knowledge that we're not the material body. So then they can actually take the spiritual processes like jnana, or yoga, or bhakti. So in other words, it's a introductory yoga to lead to other yogas. So in that sense, okay, don't criticize. But we see ultimately that Krishna rejects this process in the Bhagavad Gita. He talks about the flowery words of the Vedas that allure you with heavenly delights, etc. And he says these people are foolish. They go to Svargaloka and they fall down again. Temporary result only. And then at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, give up everything. Give up all dharmas. Surrender only unto me. Just do bhakti yoga. So, from a higher point of view, of course, these processes are impractical in our age. So this gradual process of going through karma and then getting to jnana and yoga and then to bhakti is not recommended in Kali Yuga. No one is qualified for any of these processes. To do karma yoga properly, one has to have the proper varnashramic system in place, with the king in place, descendant of Manu there, to supervise the whole system. So the gradual elevation through the gunas is not going to take place, because you don't have a whole system where the duties are very nicely defined for each varna. And therefore, not practical in Kali Yuga. So, for other ages, yes, they could do, but for Kali Yuga, no. In any case, we should not criticize the scriptures. They're describing a process for people who, don't take to the process of bhakti. So, Shruti, of course, means eternal scripture, which is never composed by anybody. It simply manifests. Even the Lord does not compose it. But if it's eternal, it cannot be composed by anybody. So it has no beginning and no end. It manifests within the universe. Next universe it also manifests. Next universe it also manifests. It's always been there. With the same words, same verses, everything exactly the same. So that's its unique quality. Smriti is like Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Puranas, are written by Vedavyasa at a certain time. And it's changeable. Words are changeable. Ideas are exactly the same as the Vedas, but the actual words may change. Every day of Brahma, Vyasadeva comes and he writes, but history is a little bit different every time. So these works are changeable, not absolutely the same. So that's the basic distinction. So there is by some, great regard for Shruti. It's the final evidence among the different scriptures. It's more powerful by some, like Shankaracharya. Like I said, Shruti is stronger than Smriti. We don't agree with that. We say Bhagavatam is the strongest Shruti because it's the conclusion of everything. But some people, traditionalists, will say, the Shruti is strong. And therefore, when people argue, generally they will quote Shruti, particularly Upanishads, to support their view. Yeah. So out of deference to others, our acharyas also do that. They often quote Shruti to support the Vaishnava philosophy. Yeah. So the Shruti is also, as I said, perfect. So therefore the Karma Kanda is part of the Shruti. The other is the Jnana Kanda and Upasana Kanda. They're all part of the Vedas, so we cannot criticize the Karma Kanda because it's part of the Shruti, which is eternal, part of the Supreme Lord. So therefore we have to be very careful. Yes, we don't practice it, but we also don't condemn it. We understand its place, but it's not practical at this moment. That's all. So the Shruti is non-different from the Supreme Lord also. So what is the remedy if we do criticize unnecessarily? So we should praise the Shruti, understand its true position, and understand the position of Karma Kanda, its function in relation to the gunas, etc. And we should chant the holy name to rectify our offense. So that's just, he doesn't go through all the aparadhas, he just goes through these three. Anarthas arising from bhakti. This may feel very strange because bhakti destroys the anarthas. We have anartha and vritti taking place, so how can bhakti produce anarthas? So, bhakti is not a punya, it's a little different because it arises from the Supreme Lord. But by practicing bhakti, we can get material assets like money or properties. We can get a following of people, etc., fame. All these things will come with the practice of bhakti. So, if we become attracted and attached to those things for material reasons, that becomes the anartha. The things in themselves, no. We can use things for Krishna, not a problem. But when we are taking advantage for our own pleasure, then it becomes anartha. So that's how anartha can arise from bhakti. Right? Because these material things become objects of attachment for us. So, we have these different stages. We have bhajana kriya, and then we have anartha and vritti taking place, and then we get to nishta, ruchi, asakti, bhava, and prema. So, Vishnu Chakravarti analyzes how these different types of anartha are destroyed, how the stages of anartha and vritti for these various things like sins, pious activities, aparadhas, and anarthas arising from bhakti. They all go at different rates. So sins or punyas are basically the same rate. We do start the bhajana kriya, and we go through it, get a little more removal of that, of the obstacles due to sins or pious activities, karma, etc. Nishta is almost complete. And by the end of asakti, generally all the anarthas due to sin and pious activity are gone. So that means all your karmas are gone. But we look at faulty bhakti, where we can get anarthas through bhakti. Starts slight, more, almost complete. It goes quicker, ruchi, completely finished. And why is that? Because ruchi is a stage where we have a spontaneous attraction to bhakti. So therefore the possibility of becoming attracted to wealth, fame, etc., is very, very slight at that point. So the ruchi itself doesn't permit us to become attracted to material things at that stage. So the real interesting thing is the anarthas arising from aparadha. This is a slower process. We see that it goes from slight destruction, general destruction, and bhava. An asakti stage, end of asakti, the anarthas from sin and piety were all gone. Here, we only get a kind of a general destruction in bhava stage after that. And in prema, almost completely destroyed. And siddha means you go to the spiritual world, and there's no aparadha at all. So what aparadha can there be in prema? The only aparadha would be accidental, that we don't even know it's there, but because we have a material body in the material world, other people get offended. So that could cause aparadha. That's the only thing. But otherwise, the prem bhakti is also free, but like that. So, in other words, to get rid of aparadhas is a slower process than getting rid of the sins and pious activities, anarthas. Like that, we can say a little graph here. We go through the different things. So, the papa and punya is one thing, and before that we get those yuta bhakti through the ruchi stage, then we get a sakti stage with the red one there, and then finally the black one is the aparadha, and that continues up to prema. So there's a of aparadhas. Aparadha remains. So that's why we have to beware of aparadha. It is said, for instance, that Bharat, he was in bhava stage, and then he became attracted to the deer, or the fawn actually, the baby deer, and then he forgot to worship the Lord. He became so attracted to the deer. So, but bhava means we actually see the Lord, and he saw Vishnu. And he had ecstatic symptoms like fainting and quivering of the body, etc. Sattvika bhavas. So how is it possible he could become attracted to a deer when he saw the spiritual form of the Lord, which is most beautiful? And a deer is just a little fuzzy animal. It's a material. How could he transfer his affection to a deer when he saw the beautiful form of the Supreme Lord? When Prahlad saw Dhruva saw the form of the Lord, then he said, I give up, I reject completely all my desires for kingdom, etc. Because it was so beautiful. But Bharat, he became attracted to a deer. How is it possible? So, explanation is given. Previously, it doesn't say when, he had committed some aparadha. So the effect of the aparadha continued and continued into the bhava stage, and caused some disturbance in his mind, and therefore he became attracted to the deer. So in other words, even in bhava stage, the effects of previous aparadhas are not completely destroyed, and they can surface even in bhava stage and cause problems. So the effect of aparadhas is much more lingering. It lingers for longer into the bhava stage. So we have to be very, very careful of such aparadhas. So Vishnu Chakravarti also makes another interesting point, that we have these stages, bhajana kriya, anartana vritti, nishta ruchi, asakti, and then bhava, and then prema. So he says this is these steps where the gradual destruction of the anarthas takes place. Here we find where it's gradually it's all happening. This gradual effect of destruction, anartana vritti, takes place when the people have committed some namaparadhas. The process becomes slow like this. If one has completely avoided the namaparadhas, even in namabhas, like accidentally, as in the case of Ajamil, then all your anarthas are immediately gone. You can destroy them very quickly. So if we're going through this gradual stage, that means because of aparadha. So aparadha slows down the process of destroying your karmas, destroying the effects of sin and piety, etc. More. So, what is the effect of the aparadha? The enthusiasm to do bhakti begins to weaken. We cannot practice so nicely. We don't have any impetus to do bhakti. So we lose the taste for chanting. But the only way we can get out of the aparadha is to chant. But we lose we lose a taste for it. So then, very dangerous, because the very cause of recovering is not there. If we somehow manage to chant and chant in spite of the fact we have no taste for it, then gradually we get a little taste. So in other words, the destruction of the taste stops and we develop a little taste. And then gradually we can perform other types of bhakti as well, and we can progress. So, therefore, the serious damage of aparadha is it weakens our bhakti. We have less inclination to perform devotional service and chanting. And consequently, the possibility of correcting the situation becomes less and less. Vishnu Chakrabarti closes this section by saying that we should not attribute external effects and say, oh, this person is suffering, therefore somehow or other they must have done something wrong. Sometimes, without doing offenses, we can end up with these effects that look like suffering. So, one reason, of course, is that the bhakti, and particularly chanting the name, hide their effect. So even though the person is free of karma, it looks like he has karma, and he is suffering. That's the nature of bhakti. So in the case of Ajamil, for instance, even though he chanted the name and all of his karmas were destroyed, for a long time it looked like he was the same old person committing sinful activity. And no one could understand that he was actually, Yamaraj couldn't touch him, no one understood that. Even the Yamadutas didn't understand that. He's a sinful person up until the point of death, still doing sinful activities even. So the effect of the holy name was hidden. Didn't manifest. It suddenly chanted the holy name and then he was a very nice devotee or anything, or very pure. No, he was still doing sinful activities all along up until his death. So the holy name hides its potency. Often it hides it, so we can't really tell if it's acting or not. And so therefore the suffering that people have, we cannot say, okay, then he must be suffering because he's doing so many sinful activities and aparadhas, so therefore the name isn't acting. It's a very slow process for that person. No, not necessarily so. Of course, the other reason is that in the case of, especially in the case of perfect devotees or nityasiddhas, it's all an arrangement of the Lord. So if the Pandavas suffer, we cannot say, oh, they did some aparadhas, therefore they're suffering, they lost their kingdom, this and that. No, arrangement of the Lord again. So sometimes the Lord does that. He makes special arrangement, and it appears there is suffering for those devotees, but actually it's not suffering, it's part of the Lord's lila, pastimes. So we should never criticize those devotees and say, oh, they got karma or they got aparadha, therefore the effect of bhakti is not there, the anartha nivritti didn't take place because of their serious aparadhas or whatever. So that's not the case. So, that's one thing. Third shower. We'll go on to the fourth one. So, from that anartha nivritti stage, then we get to nishta. But of course, we see that the anartha nivritti keeps going. It's not that suddenly after anartha nivritti we get nishta, then anartha nivritti stops. No, this anartha nivritti is going on into bhava stage, or in the case of the karmas up to asakti stage, or in the case of anarthas from bhakti up to ruchi stage. But they continue after the nishta stage. But at a certain point, we end up with nishta as a result of a significant amount of anarthas being destroyed. So this is also described in the Bhagavatam. We have this verse here that talks about the Lord becoming established in the heart and destroying aparadha, all the inauspicious things. So that's what anartha nivritti. All the anarthas get destroyed by the Lord appearing in the heart. Krishna is Hridi Antasta. So Krishna appears in the heart and he starts destroying your anarthas. So that's quite significant because we see that Krishna is taking a personal interest in the devotee. We don't hear the Gyanis getting Krishna in the heart and destroying their anarthas, or the yogis. No, but Krishna comes for the devotee and he destroys the anarthas in the heart. So then what happens? Bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Naishtiki, same as nishta. So we get to the stage of nishta by this destruction of the anarthas. Nasta prayeshu abhadras. It doesn't say completely destroyed, but significantly destroyed. Nashta, almost destroyed, but not completely. First line. So, the destruction takes place, and at a certain stage of that destruction of anarthas, then we get nishta, or steadiness. Not complete at nishta, but at least significantly. So that the performance of bhakti is steady. We don't get disturbed. Previously we saw that there was a constant struggle, and sometimes enthusiastic, sometimes no enthusiasm, like this. There were those 6 things, Taranga Rangani also like that, 6 qualities of Anishta Bhakti. So, at Nishta stage, absence of loya, which means sleeping. Sleeping during chanting and hearing, etc. So that is, it's no longer there at Nishta. One is able to stay alert. Absence of vikshepa, which means projecting material ideas upon the name or hearing or whatever. So we think of Krishna in a material way, or the name, and then we think of it as in a material way. So that's absent. Apratipatti, absence of spiritual indifference. We may not be sleepy, we may not have a distracted mind, but still we're apathetic to the process of chanting. So that's absent in nishta. We have continual enthusiasm. Kashaya, absence of sinful habits and displays of anger, greed, lust, etc. So, in other words, the mind and the senses are under control. In nishta, it's not a struggle. In anishta states, there was a struggle. Vishaya sangara, war with material objects. We get continually attracted. In this stage, that is absent. Rasasvad, attraction to material enjoyment while chanting or hearing. So, anishta stage, yes, mind gets bewildered and attracted to other things, even when chanting. In nishta stage, we can steadily concentrate on the chanting process. Mind does not get disturbed. So, there are still impurities because we're going through from nishta to ruchi to asakti to bhava. Even in bhava, there are impurities. So the impurities are not gone, but they don't cause us a big problem at this stage of nishta. So bhakti is significantly a little bit more, so the anarthas don't overpower us. Types of nishta. Nishta means steadiness. Steadiness and bhakti. Using the body in terms of words, speaking, and in terms of mind. Steadiness in qualities like humility, respect, friendliness, etc. So, of these two, the steadiness in the bhakti itself and the process of bhakti is more important here. When we become steady in our bhakti, we can see the steadiness in others as well and appreciate that. And consequently, we can associate with like-minded persons and advance by that. Steadiness in qualities does not always mean steadiness in bhakti. Steadiness in qualities could arise from being situated in sattva gun, which is actually not related to bhakti. So, therefore, we have to be a little careful that we're not just looking at some general qualities like humility and peacefulness, etc. A person may be peaceful, but he may not even be a devotee. So real steadiness is steadiness in the practice of bhakti itself, that we are chanting and hearing, etc. Okay, that finishes that. Maybe I can go into another one. Oh, it's late, isn't it? Okay, I'll do this tomorrow. There are small ones. Okay, any question there? It was in terms of this. This means anarthas arising from punya. It's not that bhakti is a punya. Of course, sometimes I said bhakti is the best punya. In the sense, it's the best purificatory activity that gives good results. So through bhakti, you could get the same results as punya, that is svargaloka, brahmaloka, etc. But it gives you higher results than that even. You can get liberation, you can also get spiritual world, you can get prema. So it's the most powerful thing. It can destroy your karmas or whatever. You can do all of that. But here, we're talking about the punyas, the material punyas one does, which create obstacles for you. So as a result of your punyas in previous life, then you could have lots of money in this lifetime. So that can act as an obstacle. Not necessarily, but sometimes it would. We can also use those punyas for good as well, but it may act as an obstacle for some people, so they cannot really advance in bhakti because they're too busy trying to preserve their money in this lifetime or enjoy it. So therefore they have less time for bhakti because of that. Or they get sidetracked by those material things. So that's an obstacle due to punya, that's the money. What aparadha? The devotee aparadha? Depends on the aparadha, of course.
So we may not be able to tell that what aparadha, but there are some aparadha because we can see, observe our practice of bhakti is not that deep.
Oh, well, it may not be because of aparadha. It could be, but it could be for other reasons as well. Simply because we have a lot of attachments, for instance, due to previous lives of enjoying a lot, we have a lot of attachments. So this could make your progress slower. So it is said that there's the 10th aparadha, that in spite of, hearing all the glories of the name, one still remains materially attached. So some people, they don't have sufficient attachment to the Lord to give up their material attachments. So one of the qualifications mentioned in Bhagavatam for practicing bhakti is not too much material attachment. Too much material attachment, it becomes very difficult to practice bhakti. So that's not because of aparadha as such, it's we're very materially attached. So we have to have some less attachment to material enjoyment to qualify us, along with the shraddha. In the case of having aparadhas and then practicing bhakti, yes, that will slow down the process also. If it's from previous lifetimes, we can't tell what we did then. So all we can do is persevere in the process and sincerely practice bhakti in this lifetime and avoid aparadhas in this lifetime.
the deed. So even though he is such an elevated soul, if he is fallen, something like that, how we know that we offended someone in the previous Shinma, how we can only repent it, how we can apologize or...
Oh, if some previous lifetime, obviously we don't know. If it's this lifetime, okay, yes. Even this lifetime previously, we may not know also until we became a devotee. So it's something like the unconscious accidental. We may also, even when now we may commit offense accidentally, we don't even know. It's not intentional. If it's unintentional, then of course it's not such a problem. It may restrict the bhakti, but it doesn't really destroy it. It just slows it a little bit. If it's intentional, then it creates more of a problem.
It shows in the Bhanu Maharaj case, just because karma is aparadha karma, it's just followed up him.
Yeah. So we have to, if we do know that we did an aparadha, then we have to follow this whole process of repenting and then going to the person and apologizing, and then chanting the holy name, etc. If we don't do that, then it could prolong like that and surface later on and cause problems for us. If we don't know it was accidental completely, it wouldn't have such a strong effect, but then we can maybe infer it by our present state of having a lot of problems, and therefore all we can do also is chant in that case if we don't even know who the object of the aparadha was. Mm-hmm.
With an aparadha, can you be punished for that? Endlessly until you apologize to that person?
Well, the punishment is not like hellish punishment. Of course, you can also get hellish punishment, but the main effect is the destruction of bhakti. That's the main problem, which may be quite quick to take its effect. So once that's done, then of course, because one has a weak taste for bhakti, it is likely one may not be able to recover and, make amends and even appreciate the fact that he's done aparadha and apologize to the person, because he has no taste for bhakti anyway. So that's what makes it dangerous. So apparently it does not have such a long-lasting effect. It's quite immediate in many cases. However, we do get cases like Bharat where the effect was not felt until much later in the bhava stage. For some reason, it's not explained why it only manifested there. It was probably not even a serious aparadha, as far as I can see. It was probably because it was serious, his bhakti would have been immediately, weakened, but it didn't. So it was a lesser type of aparadha, but still it affected him later on.
So let's say with Bharat Maharaj's case, because he committed some aparadha.
Yeah.
Because he got the reaction for that.
Yeah. Then he won't have to suffer for that again.
Then that's
Yeah. Well, of course, you could say the second effect of that was he became a deer. So that's maybe another effect of it. And then he had to tolerate that whole lifetime as a deer for how many years? I don't know how many years a deer lives, but maybe 15 years or whatever a deer's lifespan is, or 20 years or something like that. So he had to tolerate that also. Then it was over with. And then he became a brahmana and he got prema in that lifetime. So he actually progressed through that also. So as a deer, he regretted, because he got the power to remember his previous lifetime as a deer, which was a benediction. So it wasn't a real punishment in one sense, because he got a benediction to remember his previous lifetime. So when he became Bharat, Jad Bharat, he was very, very determined never to become attached to anything. So then he got prema through that. So that arrangement was actually an arrangement of the Lord, so he could advance also. So the punishment turned into we can say some blessing also in one sense.
Why it is said that Bhagavatam destroys the Anartha almost? Why it is not complete destruction?
Well, at nishta it's not complete, because the anarthas continue, as we saw in that diagram, and then the anarthas from papa and punya continue into the end of asakti, which is after nishta. And then the effect of aparadha can continue even into bhava stage. So therefore there are aparads, or there are anarthas, still anarthas at nishta stage.
So Srimad Bhagavatam can give us prema. Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
So that can give the prema. But when we say nashta prayeshu amadre.
But we're talking about a Naishtika bhakti here. It's going through stages. So Krishna appears in the heart. He starts a process of anartha nivritti, destroying the obstacles. You get to nishta stage where they're almost destroyed. Then you go to ruchi, asakti, more destruction, bhava, more destruction, and then prema, complete. So it's not complete at nishta stage. It's only describing one stage there, nishta. Then it goes on further to describe the higher stages.
You explain that one side effect of bhakti may be to increase material assets,
Yeah.
which would be anartha or distraction. My question is, if it becomes obvious to me that someone else has become attracted to, money or followers or proper adoration, distinction, is an offence to criticise them, pointed out as not criticising. Is that an offence?
Well, possibly go to the person and talk to him personally rather than publicly criticizing is better. In other words, we try to rectify the situation in the best way possible for that person.
I may not know them, I may not know them personally.
Uh-huh. Well, then you could write to persons who may know the person and try through them as well.
So it's not really offence to personally point it out to them.
Yeah. So, the offense is we can say because of the intention behind it. So the aparadha would be to maliciously criticize people for no faults when they don't have faults, but we criticize faults in them anyway, or to take the faults and unnecessarily criticize them or publicize them when there would maybe a better method of dealing with it and correcting the situation. Yeah. So we may publicize it because we don't like the person personally or something like that. So that's not good. So we should handle it in a different way. So our intention is also important there. That it's not just because of maliciousness or whatever. If we're trying to do good, fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he continues where he left off. Yeah, that's the general situation. There are rare cases, of course, of extraordinary mercy where suddenly they can jump, but generally there's a gradual progress.
When we commit offenses, you said that we lose taste for
Yeah.
how do we know that if we've lost taste for the holy name, it's because of offenses, or it's because the holy name is just acting perhaps in a way to teach us something? Because
Uh-huh.
as neophytes, I would guess it's quite common for neophytes to commit offenses against each other, or just to do things that are improper just
Mhm.
because of habit or
Yeah.
conditioning or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So if you do things like that and you've committed offenses and you've lost taste for the holy name, how do you know it's because of that, or because the holy name's just acting in that way?
Oh, well, generally the effect of the holy name is anartha nivritti. Yeah? We go through bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti. So the whole idea is if we don't commit any offense, we should nicely progress from one stage to the next, quite smoothly. So if we're getting all sorts of problems on the way, then that would be an indication of aparadha, or some anartha suddenly popping up and getting attachment. Or if we're at the stage of anishta bhakti, then of course we could become attached to the resolves like Taranga Rangani, and that could interrupt us and cause problems, or Vishaya Sangara, etc. So it's either we're at a lower stage that we're having problems, or we've committed aparadha and we can't get to nishta. We can't go steadily and progress steadily.
The reason I ask that is because on the one hand you could have a person losing taste for the holy name because they've committed some offense.
Mm.
But I've also heard that a
Mhm.
just to encourage them. But after a while, he withdraws that taste to
Mhm.
make them work for it. So how would you know if it's because of an aparadha or Krishna's just doing this deliberately just to make the person work?
Uh-huh. Well, if it's deliberate, of course, I never heard that, as a real Siddhantic thing, that Krishna takes your taste away on purpose for some reason. Rather, he's always eager that you do more bhakti, so he wouldn't do that purposely, as far as I can see. We do have cases, of course, where great devotees fall into difficulty here and this and that, but they don't lose their taste in any case. Generally, he tries to encourage people. The encouragement may take different forms in different cases, like taking away your wealth or whatever like that, or giving you wealth. Also, he may do that. So, depending on the case of a person's advancement, the Lord may act differently. But at the same time, the Lord generally tries to help those devotees, especially in the early stages, because it's very delicate. So, he doesn't want to destroy their faith by causing disturbing conditions for them. He more tries to protect them and nourish their faith. So, therefore, the difficulties may be there due to aparadha more than Krishna testing the person at such an early stage. That's my own opinion, at least. Mm-hmm. Not that I know. No, I don't know where it's from. Yeah. What about it? Oh. Well, yes, I said the important one is steadiness and bhakti itself. Steadiness and qualities. You could have many nice qualities. And of course, good qualities arise from bhakti. But those qualities are in relation to bhakti itself and the Supreme Lord. But good qualities of sattva could arise independently of that. So therefore, we can see a devotee and he has all wonderful sattvic qualities that may have arisen from other sources, not from bhakti itself. So he may be a neophyte, but he has good qualities because previously he was in sattva. So that doesn't make him an advanced devotee, simply because he has those sattvic qualities. He may be very peaceful, etc., but not necessarily he's on a higher stage because of that. But on the other hand, we do see that an advanced devotee will manifest all wonderful qualities that may look like sattva qualities also, but actually they're not. They're spiritual qualities. But they may be very similar, so we may not be able to distinguish between those two types of qualities. Okay, fine. Okay, Hare Krishna.